For joining me.
Good evening.
Aldrin, there's so much happening, but let's look at the most important question that's probably on everyone's mind. Will the ANC be able to convince President Jacob Zuma to step down?
It's a difficult one because if you speak to some members of the ANC, some who believe that the president of the country, Jacob Zuma, must complete his term, which ends in 2019, whereas on the other hand, those heading up to the ANC's elective conference were clear even before the conference that President Jacob Zuma should go. But President Jacob Zuma, the ANC president, finished his term as the president of the ANC, and these calls are just mounting now that the president should go. And just listening back to what Gwede Mantashe just said now earlier on at a church service in Katlehong at St. George Apostolic Church, he said that they will be speaking to President Jacob Zuma this evening, and they don't want to be hostile, and they don't want to humiliate the president, but they want him to think about the interest of the country and the interest of this economy. So definitely there will be a push to get President Jacob Zuma to step down.
I just want to focus on your point about, focusing on the interests of the South Africans. We've heard this before. We heard Aldrin Sampear saying it now, and also just murmurs coming out ahead of this meeting is that the meeting is all about the interests of the people of South Africa. Why did it take so long? Why are the meetings so almost desperate now and very urgent and rushed at this point in time? Because a lot of things have been happening way before the polling starts.
And that's the strange thing that we need to take into consideration, because if you look at what history taught us when it comes to a person like Thabo Mbeki, the reason that Thabo Mbeki was fired, or the reason that was used for the firing of Thabo Mbeki, was that there was political interference in President Jacob Zuma, or the president of the ANC's corruption trial at the time, the Nicholson judgment that was handed down. And that's the reason that we heard that phrase as well, where someone within the NEC at the time said, Jacob Zuma, rather Thabo Mbeki must leave now. That was in September. That was a couple of months after Jacob Zuma had left, after Thabo Mbeki had left as ANC president. But why is this so urgent? Why does it have to happen now? Is it because President Jacob Zuma is embroiled in so many allegations of corruption, and is it because it's tainting the party's image? And that's the problem. What we're getting now is that the party is speaking about the two centers of power. They're not speaking about what it means keeping President Jacob Zuma on as president of the country in terms of the image of the ANC.
These allegations aren't new though.
Yeah, these allegations aren't new, but if you remember that Gwede Mantashe, the one who spoke now when he was ANC Secretary General, when we put these questions to him while he was the Secretary General of the party, he said it was quite difficult to fire a president of the ANC. He made the comparison again to Thabo Mbeki and saying that the reason that Thabo Mbeki, well, it wasn't really easy, but the reason that they could get rid of Thabo Mbeki at the time was that he was just president of the country. And the problem that one should take into consideration is until the ANC starts and realizes that they need to align the elective year of the ANC and the election year of the country, they will have this vicious cycle going on continuously, and they'll make this argument about the two centers of power, which I frankly think is it's not really an argument, considering that if you look at said earlier on, if you look at the chairperson of the ANC in Gauteng, Paul Mashatile, who isn't the premier in Gauteng, it is someone else. It is someone else who's the premier here in Gauteng. So why do we keep on making this argument about the two centers of power when in actual fact it is what the impact of President Jacob Zuma, the remaining president of the country, is having on the image of the ANC?
Now this meeting is very important, but why is the ANC president, Cyril Ramaphosa, not attending?
I just saw the intro that you read earlier on, that during Thabo Mbeki's time as well, it wasn't Jacob Zuma was then told Thabo Mbeki that you need to leave. And one would have to think about what Ramaphosa has been saying continuously in interviews, and saying that we must not humiliate the president of the ANC. And one would think that he doesn't want to be the one who sits there and, I was saying earlier on, is what happens in politics, like, oh, you are the one who's going to stab me in the back because now you are my successor. He doesn't want it to be seen as such. But I think the biggest task for Ramaphosa is how do you unite the ANC if you have such a divided top six already as it stands at the moment?
And we've already seen, murmurs coming out of the top six as well. Clearly a division there. What happens when President Zuma, if and when President Zuma decides to step down? Is it guaranteed that Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa will take over?
It's not guaranteed. The Ramaphosa camp, they've been pushing for him to step in and become the president of the country. And I was saying earlier on, the legal question for me still stands that should Ramaphosa become the president of the country, does that then count as a term? Because our constitution says the president must only serve for 2 terms. So does that mean that when Ramaphosa steps in as president, that also counts as a term, as it has happened in, as it's been argued in the case of Burundi, that the president there stepped in during an interim term and then wanted 2 other terms on top of that interim term that he stood in. So that will be something quite interesting that we need to watch in. But we also need to ask the question, who will stand in if it's not Cyril Ramaphosa? Would it be Baleka Mbete who stands in, or would it be someone probably like Zweli Mkhize, who's quite senior within the ANC as it stands at the moment? But of course, he's not a member of parliament as it stands at this moment.
We're running out of time, but I can't let you go without talking about the State of the Nation address. It's this week, and we've got opposition parties saying that they're looking at taking legal action to try and halt it if President Zuma is the one who is going to be there for the State of the Nation address. Your take on that, and what can we see happen there?
Some have made the argument that that the reason that we have this meeting that's taking place right now, of course, it's a mandate that comes from the National Working Committee asking President Jacob Zuma to step down, is that they want to save him the humiliation of what is to happen during the State of the Nation address, the disruption that will take place and so forth. But also this court challenge as well. Will this court challenge go ahead? On what basis do you then go to the court and say that the president must not deliver the State of the Nation address? What impact, negative impact, could President Jacob Zuma deliver the State of the Nation have on the country? So definitely the opposition will really have to come up with a really strong argument why President Jacob Zuma shouldn't deliver the State of the Nation address, considering that Parliament's Rules Committee is already in the process of dealing with the issue of the impeachment of the president after the Constitutional Court ruling.
Aldrin, this is clearly going to be a long night for us, but thank you very much for joining me.
Definitely.
For now. That was our political reporter, Aldrin Sampear, joining us for the latest developments in the ANC. I'll have more news for you after the break. Don't go anywhere.